Hello, my name is Joyous. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about how to use belief as a tool. How to hack your mind like a mystic. And I just want to start off with the question, what if beliefs aren't facts, but instead they've been spells you've been casting on yourself unconsciously? And what if you have these crazy powers within you at this whole time? In the Hermetic laws and in Hermetic principles, there's this idea of as within, so without, as above, so below. And it's talking about as within the self or within the mind or within, whatever. If you believe in all being one, then the microcosm also fits in the macrocosm of things. And as within, so without. So what if, and we're going to get into some stuff about belief, but yeah, today we're going to talk about how belief can be used, not as truth, but as a tool, as a form of magic, as a system for survival, and as a path to mental clarity. So, for thousands of years, humans have created gods to explain the unexplainable. And that's been something that we've been doing for thousands, maybe millions of years, where we've created this deity outside of us to explain the sun, the weather at first, until we were able to learn more about the weather, And even then, we still didn't fully understand how everything was placed perfectly where it was to get these ideal situations to create human life, or to create life in general. But we've been creating these deities to explain, just the microcosm and the macrocosm. And research also indicates that events such as, just major life events like illness, injury, divorce, marriage, promotions, or the death of a loved one can lead individuals to reevaluate their faith. So positive life events often correlate with increased religious commitment, while negative events may result in decreased religiosity. And for me personally, I've been in a position in my life where I had some negative life events occur, and it pushed me away from religiosity into full atheism. Well, before I was a Christian, or not even a Christian, I was believing in spirituality, believing in God, the universe, but for now that I'm kind of stabilizing or healing from those negative life events that took place, I find myself being drawn towards having faith in something, because it's better than just kicking rocks and being we're here just because things just turned out that way, whatever, right? If I go to the scientists, if I go to the atheists, they won't really have an explanation for why we're here, but they'll be everything you're claiming, a spaghetti monster can show up, and there's some invisible spaghetti monster that actually controls everything, and you need to pray to the invisible spaghetti monster. And I get that, but something I'm learning about in chaos magic, and from this book called Condensed Chaos by Phil Hines, an introduction to chaos magic, he's talking about how there are these things, I feel like this is the word, servitors. So, I don't know if it's the word, but there's some phrase that explains how some idea can metastasize and become reality because so many people believe in it, or because there's been so much, evidence towards it in some way, shape, or form, that it becomes its own thing you can say you believe in, because there's just so much behind it. Even if there's nothing scientifically backing it up, even if there's not enough history around the invisible spaghetti monster, but there is a lot of history behind Jesus Christ, for example. And I'm not saying the history is true, it's just people equate or say a lot of stuff happened because of Jesus. No one says anything about an invisible spaghetti monster. I'm getting into a lot right now. So I want to talk about the allegory of the cave by Plato. So basically, there are a bunch of people or prisoners chained up against, like, inside this cave, and the only thing they could see is the wall that had reflection of shadows on the cave. But they can't ever see what was making the shadows. They can't see anything outside of the cave. They could just see the wall that's showing all of these shadows. But one prisoner makes it out of the shadow, or breaks out of his chains, and is able to walk out of the cave and see that there's a whole life going on, and like there's the sun and like the sky, land, and like things making shadows, and it wasn't just the shadows that has been real life this whole time. And he goes back inside and like tries to convince the other prisoners to like escape and come out and see, full reality. He and all the prisoners are basically like, no, I don't feel like doing that. Like, I think this is real. I think you're lying. I don't believe you. So they don't go with him, and they just stay there with their limited reality. I think it's just something interesting that even when you go out of this cave, like, how do you know that the sun and the moon and the sky aren't a smoke and mirrors in and of themselves? This might be a little woo or whatever, but like the allegory of the cave teaches us that, we think we know and see something, but we haven't even, like, for a lot of us, we haven't even left the cave that is our comfort zones, and we haven't left the cave that is, I don't know, like, there's just so many caves that we could be sitting in without our knowledge of it. And like, once we get out of one cave in one, fragment of our mind or one way of our life, how do we not, there's just so much to say about this allegory when it comes to belief. And like, what if for a lot of us, the most sustainable thing we can do is play with the shadow in front of us and like pretend that this shadow is real life? Or like if we have all this, ability to believe in what we want to believe, just like how those guys stayed in the shadows and stayed believing their limited reality, like, can we use this belief as a tool instead of as a way to determine what's true and what's not? Because scientists don't, like, you can't even say what's true with science. Like, they just tell you what's the most accurate thing they can describe the situation as. Like, it's not even saying, it's just until a better theory comes along, this theory is the theory that they stick to. It's all theory, It's not like it's a fact in science. And I hope, I'm probably like, messing this up. But these are my thoughts thus far on the allegory of the cave, and that. But belief as a tool comes from this chaos magic book called Condensed Chaos, and I've mentioned it already. But anyway, belief as a tool comes from the chaos magic book, and they basically talk about how once we throw out this idea of truth or like proof in general, all responsibility lands back on the individual to believe what they want to believe. And since we can't prove that anything that we're seeing is actually true or not, it falls back on to us to believe what we want to believe, or believe what, we feel like actually brings us the desired results that we want in our life. And that's all the thing that chaos magic is, or like magic in general should be about, bringing about change in your life in a way that, creates personal responsibility on yourself so that you can do the things that you want to do. That's at least, what I've gathered about what magic is. But chaos magic talks about how we start to use chance and like personal will together and not be so dogmatic, or avoid dogmatism in general, to get desired results. And Condensed Chaos is a really cool book. I haven't even finished it yet, and I think it's really cool. I also want to talk about Lucifer. If you've been on the channel, you've heard me talk about Lucifer before. But Lucifer, the TV show, they come to the conclusion in that show that angels and humans self-actualize. And humans self-actualize, especially, after death, when they like send themselves to heaven or send themselves to hell. While angels self-actualize with their powers and their, invulnerability or their vulnerability or their mortality or their immortality. And by the end, Lucifer was actually able to use his belief of his self as a tool to get his daughter to believe he loves her by making himself vulnerable around her. So like for most of the show, he was only vulnerable around Chloe Decker, and then the daughter shows up back from the future, in the past, in the future, whatever, before she's even born. And she's basically, what's it called? She's basically like, I don't believe that you love me because you didn't show up in my life, whatever, right? And he was like, no, I can prove that I love you. Like, I'll be vulnerable around you. Because by this point in the story, for whatever reason, he stopped being vulnerable around Chloe Decker. And I thought that was interesting. But then he was able to be vulnerable around his daughter because he decided to do so. And like he believed that he could do it, you know? So we have some examples of what belief can look like and like how belief can be used as a detriment or as a power to ourselves, even if that comes from like allegories and TV shows or whatever. But I also want to talk about this quote that says, "Nothing is true, everything is permitted," by this guy named Hassan Shaba or Hassan I Shaba. I'm not sure. Or Hassan the first Shaba. If nothing is true, then, and I think this is something I was touching on, then proof becomes irrelevant, and the responsibility, the permission for one's actions and belief is thrown back upon the individual. So if nothing is true, everything is permitted in order for you to take personal responsibility of what you want to do in your life. And I also want to talk about the mind-body connection. So like, if your mind believes you can or can't do something, then it makes it to be true. Like there's so many feats of like people staying underwater for so long, or like, you know, staying in cold water for so long, like especially like your physical body, if you can train it to say that it can do something, then it's gonna go and do it for the most part, you know? And my immediate counter thought is Mount Everest. And plenty of people die going up there. Anyway, I also want to talk about the placebo effect. And this is kind of like where there's scientific evidence to prove that belief as a tool is a real thing. And with the placebo effect, you basically can take a sugar pill, and if you're told that the sugar pill is actually the cure for whatever ailment you're going through, or if it's aspirin, you're actually very likely to, in those next few hours, feel the pain alleviated from your body. Or like the studies show, like medicine, like they're looking for at least a 10% increase a lot of the time, or some very low increase, to show the change between like what someone's taking as a placebo versus or the control group, and versus what someone's taking for medication. Like the threshold is actually pretty low to get efficacy on a medication. But I'm not a doctor, so please don't take anything I'm saying as like, you know, truth per se. The placebo effect is real. So like, why wouldn't we use this trick that our brain does to our benefit and become conscious of our own beliefs? Yeah, why wouldn't we use this trick on our own brain, like to become conscious of our own beliefs and like figure out how to do that? So, how do you start using belief as a tool? The first step is to catalog all of your beliefs. List them all out, the good and the bad ones, especially the ones that are towards whatever you're in life that you want to change, that you're working towards. Like, list out all of the beliefs that you can. It isn't like you're not going to get all of the beliefs, you know, there's plenty of things that you subconsciously believe that you're not going to even, but like when it comes to whatever you want to change, just what do you believe about that? Everything that you can, what do you believe about what you want to change, right? The second step is to reframe your thinking around each of these beliefs. How can you flip the bad ones and turn them into something positive? And then how can you become more neutral about the supposed good ones, right? For example, for me, a bad belief that I have is that I believe I will never get a huge following unless I'm skinny. The good belief in that is that I've given myself the possibility of actually becoming or growing my following online. It's not that I will never get an audience, it's that I've put this condition upon myself to receive an audience, and this is what I practice now. And like, I'm practicing being online, and I'm practicing being the skinny version of myself, even if I'm not at that exact physical representation of the thing. Like, I'm working on, okay, what would I do if I was skinny? Every day I would probably just be posting YouTube videos and writing all day, So flipping this bad into good, it's like I've given myself a way to actually be famous online. A good belief that I have is that I'm capable of getting lots of people to agree with me and like follow me when I just open my mouth. But with that, I feel like I can also, if I'm not very aware or careful with what I'm believing or careful with what I'm espousing, I could be doing a lot of creative things or a lot of destructive things in people's lives. And I could possibly do more damage than good if I'm not very aware of the things that I'm spewing. Like, I'm looking back at some of my past videos, and like the way my beliefs have changed over time, and like I've had some private videos, is crazy, Anyway, reframe your beliefs so that you can neutralize them into something that's a bit more workable for you and your brain right now. And then start leaning more into your beliefs. And this is step 3. You start leaning more into your beliefs when you feel stuck about something. Go back to your beliefs and the ones that you have reframed and jumpstart your movement from one of these beliefs. So example, my bad belief of being skinny to get a following online. Now I personally just spend a lot more time posting YouTube videos and writing. And that helps me to avoid eating a lot of the times because I'm too busy actually doing what I want to do. Or at least that's something that I'm working on right now. But some follow-up tips on, belief. Belief is not the opposite of truth. Belief is the tool that gets you to the truth. Belief is the way, and like the way that you gain knowledge, epistemologically speaking. You have, so when it comes to epistemology, knowledge is a justified true belief. So you need to have this diagram, like a Venn diagram of knowledge being true, being a belief, and it being justified, right? So like, and your justification can come from personal experience, and that's something, especially in chaos magic, they really harp on, is having justifications come from your personal experience, not just from facts or things that are in a textbook. It's from your personal life, your personal experience. True meaning like, these are things, they're not false, like you're not just lying or making stuff up. And belief is that you actually, have faith in what you have justified as true. You can trust your senses, you can trust what you can say is true. And it's, if it's unfalsifiable, then you can't really say that it's true per se. But if it's justified to you and your personal experience, then that's where you find the real strong belief or whatever, right? Anyway, belief is a tool that gets you to truth. It is. And chaos magicians don't believe anything is real per se, and you don't have to be a chaos magician, but something that I've learned is that they don't believe anything is real per se, but they believe that everything is powerful, everything is permissible, everything has the power to support you in your goals, and your, like, if you believe that being a Christian is something that supports you and reading the Bible is something that supports you, and you believe that belief in that is what powers that thing, then you're practicing, chaos magic, but whatever. I just think it's a very interesting thing that like your belief is what powers you to do a lot of things. So I want to ask you, what belief would you change in your life if you let it? What belief would you change your life if you let it? I just want to hear your thoughts on what belief that is. And, here's a journaling prompt, and you can comment below. What belief has been hurting you the most? What would happen if you flipped it? And yeah, let me know one belief you're rewriting below in the comments section. Thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate it, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. And like, comment, subscribe. Comment what you think I should be doing next. If you've watched this video all the way through, what do you think you want to hear me talk about next? Bye.